sing along, and yeah. I'm really bad at the welcomes. I like to think that my awkwardness is charming. I mean, it's...
It's better than life.
soul delights in. Give me the one whom my hope is securely found. Give me the one my soul delights in. Give me the one whom my hope is securely found. Securely found. Securely found. Securely found. Give me the one. Give me the one my soul delights in. Give me the one in whom my hope is securely found. Give me the one my soul delights in. Give me the one in whom my hope is securely found. Securely found. Securely found. Securely found. Oh, give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You can have this world. Just give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You can have this world. Just give me Jesus. Give me the one. Give me the one my soul delights in. Give me the one whom my hope is securely found. Give me the one my soul delights in. Give me the one whom my hope is securely found. Securely found. Securely found. Securely found. Oh, my hope. Oh, my hope is in you. My hope is in you, Lord. Oh, my hope is in you. My hope is in you, Lord. Oh, my hope is in you. My hope is in you, Lord. Oh, my hope is in you. So give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You can have this world. Just give me Jesus. You can have all this world. Just give is more than I know how to give. I give my heart, I give my mind, for my soul and strength entwined. All that I am, oh, to worship you and how I live is more than I know how to give. So I give my heart, I give my mind, for my soul and strength entwined. Just as I am, for you died. Just as you are, so am I. I'm alive. One you alive. Oh, to worship you and how I live is more than I know how to give. So I give my heart and I give my mind, for my soul and strength entwined. Just as I am, for you died. Just as you are, so am I. Just as I am, just as I am, for you died. And just as you are, Jesus, so am I. I'm all that I am is maker. Oh, it was always good. Lead my heart to your heart. Lead my heart to your heart. And show me who I am, who you are. Jesus, we thank you. Before anything even happened, you were good, that you were love, and in the midst of that, you made us exactly like who you are. And even when we turn our faces from you, we hear you singing loudly over us. And that song can be a two-way street. Lead my heart to your heart. Sung by us when we turn and sung by you every single second of every day. So Lord, we turn to you, knowing that you're good, knowing that you're always good, and that good can only mean good. So we thank you that in that you invite all of us, every part of us, everything that makes us human, right next to you. Thank you for who you are and who you've made us to be. Praise in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you so much, my goodness, Derek. It's good. All fixed. Thank you. It changes everything for me when you lead us in. Elise, Matt, thank you. My heart just gets changed. We really believe this idea that there's a lot more than the speaking part to being together. That it's not just about what some pastor says in a 20-minute talk. It's that the music part reaches a part of your heart. The music part reaches in somewhere where words often can't get. And that's every bit the same, that every bit as important of ministry, probably more than what's said by somebody up front. And also the community part, that we get to do this together, and we get to do this online. I think you're there. I can't see you, but I think you're there. That we do this together makes it different. Even when we have to be online, that we get to do this together makes it a different experience. So, having said all that, that was really just to say thanks to you all for leading us, and that we get to, I get to have my own heart changed by it. Welcome to everyone, guests and those who have been here for a long time. Great, so great to be here. This church is so gracious to us to let us be here. We get to partner with Beaumont Presbyterian Church, and just how happy we are to get to do that. Glad to have my daughter here. Today, we are going to take another trip through all of time. So last week I gave a shot at it, and it was the idea of God with us from the Big Bang through today and into the future. And so I want to look at it a little different way today. I want to talk about the shape of history. And so this may sound like a college lecture in some ways, and that would be weird since I've been a college professor most of my life, so that would just come out weird. I know to see that, but I think that it may be somewhat like that. I'm not going to put up our heresy meter. In the past, when I was teaching at the college, we had a heresy meter that we would put on the board to give reference to where we are in our particular discussion. And I'm not going to do that today, but I do want to do a different kind of meter today. I want to do the everything meter. And so in this meter, there's going to be a line at the bottom. And sorry online, I know this is going to be opposite for you. I got nothing for you. Just pretend like you're looking at it from behind the screen.
Can they still see us? Because you aren't moving up there. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay.
I don't know. It seems like a good shot. So this is going to be time. And I'm going to start only at the beginning of human beings. So Homo sapiens are about 3,000 BC. No, 300,000 BC. And I'm going to start at about 200 BC because that's where between 100 and 200 our most common ancestor, like the Eve, every human today came from this person or this little group of people. That was sometime between 1 and 200,000 years ago, so we'll sort of start there. And we'll go up to today, and on this axis, this is going to be the everything part of the meter. So I want to encompass every part of life in this meter. For example, healthcare is going to be this would be no healthcare. And if you get sick, you die. This is this actually happened. You get a toothache, and it gets infected, and you die. That happened. That's a bad thing. So, all right. Up here is really good healthcare, like Sweden.
Not here.
I was going to say Canada. And so Canadians have two pastimes. One of their pastimes is talking about their healthcare system and how amazing it is, and the other is complaining about how their healthcare system is. They take both of those with great vigor. Here would be another one on this would be lifespan. So if a lot of children die, that's a bad thing. If a lot of children live, the infant mortality rate, then that's going to be on the upper scale. Tell me some other things. What would be in this everything scale that would make life better? Go. And if you're online, you can say this too.
In general?
Yep. Education. We believe that education actually helps people. Now, that's not always been the case, that people believe that. Education is a fairly new idea. I'm reading Anna Karenina right now by Tolstoy. And one of the primary protagonists doesn't believe that education for the serfs would be good for them. And that's been a prevalent view through a lot of history. But we, here in this church, believe that education is actually a good thing. That people can grow, and by knowing more, they actually get better. All right, great. What else?
Freedom.
So what was the great, maybe one of the greatest Enlightenment documents said, for life, Liberty and the Pursuit of Happiness. Some of you have heard of that document. It circulated back in the 1700s. And that idea of liberty, that freedom matters. So there are lots of kinds of freedom. There is freedom in your life where you're not a slave. We think that's a good thing. There is now freedom in who you get to marry. Now, first of all, I'll step back a little bit. I mean, first of all, that you get to pick the person, like that is not picked for you. That's still the case in some of the world. But in a lot of the world, people get to pick who they marry, and then put in the caveat that now you get to actually marry anybody. Not just of the opposite sex, but you get to marry anyone. That's liberty. That's freedom. What are the kinds of liberty? What job you do. You used to do whatever your parent did. So a guy did what his dad did. It's a misnomer that women didn't used to work. Only in high society did they not work. In low society, women have always worked. Outside the home, like, they had to make the economy work. And now, you get to pick what job you do. That's a cool kind of freedom. Give me another one. Any other kinds of freedom?
Artistic freedom.
Oh man. So, yeah. There used to be a certain kind of music in church, and you had to do that kind of music. Now, you may not know this, but Bach was stepping out of what he was supposed to do with writing more chromatic music. And they wanted him to stick with the old tunes. And so he did it, but he just did it in this really creative way. And so he would make a tune, like one of the old plain chants. He'd make a tune, and then he would write all of this other stuff around it that made it beautiful in a different kind of way. Artistic freedom, that's great. I love that. All right. Other big things that we should have on our meter here.
Peace.
Oh, yeah. So, peace, we could go a couple ways with that. One would be the idea of life as opposed to death. We say life is better. Now, I know we're going on a limb on this one, but we just think life is better. So the biggest problems against life are war and plague, disease. Those are probably the big three. All of those keep us from life. All right, and I'm going to add that last one that we just mentioned. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'm going to even put happiness in here. How do you measure happiness? Well, they've actually been working on it. And they've come up with some pretty good criteria. And what they found is that the most important thing for the happiness meter by itself is relationship. People that have close relationships and more intimate relationships are happier. Now, there are other things. Working less makes you happier. So the latest report I saw said that 32 hours was not only made all the workers happier than 40, but it also made it more productive in the workplace. Unfortunately, one of the ways that culture has declined here in the last little bit is that people are working, there was a lull when people were working less and now they're working more again. And that's a bad sign. Are we at the phone?
Just this.
Yeah, we'll do that. All right. All right, now to the shape of history, we're going to do all of those together. All of those factors are going to be accounted for in here, we're going to say. Here is the traditional shape of history from the Christian perspective. Now, let me start. The secular perspective. Here's the beginning of time. Here is the shape of history. Now, not precisely that, but that idea that from the beginning until now, things have gotten steadily better. That's the traditional belief. It's not what secular people usually believe today, but it was the traditional understanding in a secular way of how humanity has gone on the everyday meter. Here's the traditional Christian view. I think it's 50-50 this stays up the whole time. Life started at the garden, and it was grand. Then came the fall. So garden, however long, we don't know. They don't know. Then the fall was like this. After the fall, it was cruddy. It was bad. All right. Then there's a steady increase all the way up to Jesus. Some people put Jesus a little lower than the garden, but most people would put Jesus up a little higher, come up here. Then there are two divergent views. One is, in traditional Christian understanding, one view is that since the time of Jesus, there's pretty much been this. How many times have you heard this? Things are getting so bad. Jesus is coming back soon.
Oh.
Right? That's this view. That's the Make America Great Again idea. That it used to be better, and now it's gotten worse. There's one other traditional Christian view, and it's this is the Middle Ages. And then after the Middle Ages, it got better again, and only recently has it turned and gone bad again. And this was probably 1950.
That's when America was great.
That's when America was great. Yeah, that's exactly right. Oh my goodness. Okay.
We're only talking about America.
Okay, because that's all that exists. That's right. Okay. Now, the contemporary secular view is different. This isn't accepted by everybody, but it's widely accepted now. And this may surprise some of you. That actually, that things started off really good. That the first couple 100,000 years were really good. Now I'm going to put that in just this little line right here. Actually, it's probably closer to something like this. They would say that in those hunter-gatherer years, it was a good life. And there's a lot to support that. The reality is, it was almost certainly egalitarian culture. Everybody in the group was equal, men and women. Not only that, they were well-to-do in terms of their needs. They have very simple needs. They estimate that they only had to spend 50% of their time doing the things that they needed to do for survival. The other 50% were for family time, pastimes, storytelling, dancing, things like that, important things. And that's a really different idea, and part of the reason is because the only hunter-gatherer societies that still exist today live so in the most, in the worst climates possible, because we've pushed them to that place. That's the only places left. So in the Kalahari Desert, there are still hunter-gatherers. And it's a pretty unhospitable place. Or in places in Australia, there are still hunter-gatherer societies in the deep Amazon. And so in most of the area, back to 100,000 years ago, people were living in wonderful places for their climate. And supplies were readily available, so they had a much more balanced diet. They had fish, meat, and things that they would, they're not legumes, what is it
Mushrooms?
Mushrooms, and things you dig up like potato roots.
Figs?
I know what you're thinking of.
Yes, well, those things that and roots that you pick up, but also dates, fruits, all of those kinds of things made for a really good diet. These people were quite healthy. And disease hadn't really entered the cultures very much, because they lived in a, well, I'll tell you why in a minute. Then something happened that changed everything. And this, fire happened about 125,000 years ago. And that's not what I'm talking about. That did change everything. Things got way better with fire. But about 10 to 12,000 years ago, something happened that changed everything. Anybody know? I'm sure you do. Agriculture. People started, instead of becoming hunter-gatherers, people started living in a single community and staying put and raising food there. For the first time in history, people owned stuff. Before then, everything belonged to everybody. But now, people had their own things, including their own children. Before, children belonged to the whole group. Now it was my kid, my stuff. Well, you can imagine that this is right about the same time as the invention of lying. The invention of war. As far as we know, there was very little war, if any, before the beginning of agriculture. And with agriculture, we have, of course, civilization. So, in this view, this happens at the point of agriculture and civilization. And then what you have, there are two secular views. One is that things, with everything that has gotten better, there's been a trade-off and things have gotten worse. But the more common view is one more like this. Now, for a contemporary Christian view, I'd like to just suggest a possibility. What if there was truly a good time in ancient history, pre-civilization, and then agriculture came, and what if the man had to start working by the sweat of his brow? Does that ring a bell for anybody? And what if the woman started to become being subject to her husband. And if either of those sound familiar to you, you will recognize it as the curse from the fall. And that's exactly what happened at the advent of civilization. What if the garden was really a kind of garden? And people lived, and God was actually with them. What if they sort of like understood God, and He was with them? And then civilization came, agriculture came, and things became really hard. In this big dip, some things that happened were patriarchy. Men became in charge. And they forced their in-chargeness on everybody else. Non-egalitarian society happened with this. Now there are classes of people. For the first time, now you can be good and other people be out. Other people be bad. Other things that happened in this were their diet plummeted, because now they're just eating like starchy things, like they're all eating corn, and they've lost the variety that they used to have. So if you look at bones, skeletons from this time, say 8 to 10,000 BC, if you can tell the difference whether they are still in the hunter-gatherer culture or whether they are in the agriculture. Because the agriculture skeletons are shorter, and the bones are malnourished. Also, disease came in at this time because people started living in close cultures with each other, with animals, domesticated animals, and then disease came in. So that's sort of that time. Then things get in this way, in this idea, things would get better, and Jesus would eventually come, and the Holy Spirit would come, and things would get better because God was interacting with people. In this Christian view where everything gets worse, do you realize what that means? It means that the Holy Spirit came into the world and things got worse. What? Jesus came into the world and then things got worse. Until now when they've gotten really bad. Does that make sense? What if God put in people a collective conscience where things actually changed? All right, now I want to show you a few graphs here, and I'll do this quickly, but I want to show you because Kristen made these up last night, and they're astounding to me. They're so fine. So I know I'm running out of time, so I don't want to spend much time on them, but boy, are they cool. If you're a graph person like me, this is just the best. All right.
What?
Can you all see?
Yeah.
How's that? Can you all see now? All right. Even if you can't see what all those words are, this is the wars. And what we're talking about here is I've gone from the time of Jesus until present. And each of those numbers are the number of thousands of people that died in those wars. All right, now let me show it to you in graph form. There's a couple ones that you might be surprised at in the wars here. You see that last one that's like really down below the graph? That's World War II. That's over 70 million people dead. So we talk about it in American terms. That's 600,000 people. But in global terms, 70 million World War II. That spike before it, the second long one, that's about the time of the American Civil War. But that spike isn't because of the American Civil War. That's because of the Chinese Civil War. But as you can see, outside of these spikes, the amount of war has actually lessened dramatically since the time of Christ. See those long bars? Those are wars that lasted a long time. That used to be how it happened. Wars, the 30 Years' War, the 100 Years' War, the longer wars. All right, next slide. These are plagues. The Black Death plague, 140 million dead. But look, notice that that's over a long period of time. This last one is the one that surprises me. You can see at that very end, that's the HIV plague. 136 million dead. Speaking of, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that was a horrendous thing that largely was not noticed. I'm so ashamed to say, largely not noticed. It was two things: somebody else's problem, and it was their own damn fault. Right? Have you heard that? Oh, I hope it crushes your heart like it crushes mine. That was our attitude. That was the attitude of this culture, of the American culture, and of a lot of the Western world. It's not true, right? It was a horrible calamity. Horrible calamity. Okay, that's HIV. Considering, in COVID we've lost, I don't know how many million. Not many. I mean, it's bad, right?
6 or 7.
6 or 7 million? 136 for HIV. Oh my goodness. Okay, next slide. This is a graph then of the plagues. And you can see overall we're doing actually great. That's the Spanish flu that you see there, the big one before the HIV one at the very end. Next slide. This is technology and where we've come. Gunpowder, printing press. We would say that technology is a good thing, that it's helpful to us. I especially want to point out, let's see. Oh, you see up at the very top, the AC, that's air conditioning. And you can tell that these were slides made up by my daughter. She says that air conditioning is the pinnacle of culture. Nothing goes higher than air conditioning. Technology. Next slide. Here is all of those things together. And this is the great slide. Ta-da! Next one. This is the 3 different ones, so you can see them. The technology in the green, the plagues in that sort of purple at the top, the wars. And then if you put those 3 together, you get this one. And it gives you a more complex, more realistic everything graph. Again, air conditioning is up high there. Now it looks like the Reformation is a really wow, that solved a lot. That's actually the end of the plague, the Black Plague. So that's why it shoots up. It's not so much the Reformation, it is the end of a big plague. But I love this graph that I think gives us a pretty good picture of everything, of what we've gone through. All right. How in trouble am I? I'm gonna, if it's all right with everybody, I'm gonna take another week on this because I haven't gotten to the point yet. The point of where we're gonna go next week is about the God with us idea. What would it mean if in all of these places, two things were happening? First of all, God was fixing culture by the idea of this collective conscience. The second is, what if God was with people through all of these things? What kind of God would that be? So I want to talk about history in terms of the God interaction and what that does to people. So just to give you a preview, we're going to talk about slavery and about women's rights and about LGBTQ rights and all of those kinds of things, turns out, next week. And in terms of what this would mean if God's love was two things, both interacting with history and being with people in history. All right, and I'll leave it there for today.
For the next couple of minutes, we have some communion and stuff at these two different stations. So this next song is going if you want to go and gather that, and then we'll take communion together. Don't you know I've always loved you, and I always will.
And that's this idea of taking our communion of a God who has loved us through history and always will. And He gives us this to remind us of His presence, of His witness. So take it, remembering God is with us.
If you are on Zoom, you all can hang out for a little while. We do have to turn it off and get cleaning up here. But we love all of you, and thanks for being with us. If you're new, please come back again. Things will be better. We love technology unless it's Zoom. So it's been a year and a half of this crap. Thanks for being with us. We love you all. Yep.